I'm Chris Lee, joined by Blake Lovell. Today, Blake, we are having a lot of fun picking the SEC Player of the Year. We're going to get to our eventual selection, but first of all, my goodness, this was just one heck of a task trying to determine even who's on the list. You've got five-star freshmen all over the place. You've got marquee transfers. You've got mid-major players of the year coming into this league, transferring from some other places. You got a lot of good returnees. I mean, it was really a tough list to put together because there's so many good players in this league, and I would say more than there were a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, we're going to leave someone off that
Right.
many people think should be on there. It's just there's going to be multiple people we leave off this top 14, but that's why we're doing it. And I think the best part is, luckily, when Texas and Oklahoma join, we can expand that to 16, and at least we'll
Yeah.
get a couple more people on there. But yeah, I mean, this is just for like full transparency. Like, this is for fun. I think like this is an exciting way to kind of look at some of these players heading into the season. By no means is an exact science. There's a lot of unknowns, especially when you haven't seen a player play in college before. Yeah, there may be a 5-star, whatever, and all this, but until you actually see them, I think it's so hard to gauge exactly what they're going to do. So yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. This is a fun way to look at the season and really kind of appreciate a lot of these great players around the league. So
Yeah, and I would say it was easier selecting the 14 than it was selecting the order.
right,
So let's
I
get
think that's
into it.
fair.
Yeah, and let's just get right into it. Near the bottom of the list, two Arkansas guards returning. We've got J.D. Note at 14. We've got Devante Davis at 12. A lot of people think Davis really showed out in the postseason, is ready to take the next step forward as one of the league's dominant players. I've even seen him mentioned as a Player of the Year type candidate. I don't know if we're there yet. We got to play the season, but two Arkansas guards to kind of kick off our list here, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna, we know how it's gonna work for Arkansas. We've talked about it in the, kind of power rankings video and looking at kind of where things are gonna stand for them without Moses Moody and Justin Smith. And I don't think there's any doubt that two guys like that, and obviously Chris Likes is someone that will factor into the mix too. And so yeah, I mean, I think with Arkansas, I've talked about I don't want to call them reservations with Arkansas, but I still think Arkansas is a top 25 team. I think there's easier ways to point out some of their weaknesses this year than I think it would have been last year. And so I think when you look at those two guys, Davis, Note, I mean, two proven guys who played last year, big parts of what they did. That to me makes it easier to put them on a list like this than maybe it does someone else on that roster who could wind up being maybe their best player, second best player, whatever. I just think it's easier to go off of what you've seen within the system and all that. And so I think, yeah, those two guys will be a big part of what they do. So,
Well, and it's a good bet that guards are going to put up big numbers in Eric Musselman's system, too.
yeah. And I mean, the way they play defense and stuff, like those guys will be on the floor a lot. So I'd be surprised if they're not. So,
Next one in between, we've got Jabari Smith at Auburn, the freshman power forward, five-star player. Frankly, didn't know what to do with him. We just kind of put him here. He could be not on the list at the end of the year. He could be at the top of the list. I think it's harder for big men to really be player of the year type guys in the SEC as freshmen, but the talent there kind of hard to ignore.
yeah. And I mean, he's with Alan Flanagan out. I mean, he's going to be a big part early. I mean, he'll get a lot more, I think, just based on usage and that kind of stuff. He's really good. I mean, like I said, it's hard to gauge exactly what someone's going to do who hasn't been in college before. But I think when you look at someone like him, I mean, it's pretty clear he's very talented. And I think playing with a Bruce Pearl system like we talked about, it's going to be probably much more front court oriented maybe than back court oriented this year. And that's not to knock their guards. I think they'll be good, but they're going to have some really talented players in the front court. And I think that, for someone like Jabari Smith, it's kind of a no-brainer. I don't know how you leave him off a list like this just because, I mean, the expectation is that he's going to be very, very good. I'd be surprised if he's not, an all SEC type player, certainly one of the best freshmen probably in the league. So, yeah, where you put him, that's debatable. I'm sure if you're an Auburn fan, you probably have him much higher. If you're an Alabama fan, may not have him on the list. But I think, it is, again, this is sort of, if you're looking at the end of the year, if we're having this discussion, I'd be surprised if he's not in there. So,
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Alan Flanagan. We did not put him on the list. That was not because of the talent. Look, if
Yeah.
Alan Flanagan is healthy, then he's a top 5 player in this league, maybe even player of the year potentially. But he's going to miss several weeks, and body of work is going to be important. When you miss 10, 12 games or whatever it's going to be for him, I don't know. I'm throwing that off the top of my head. It's hard to build a player of the year body of work, even if you're the best player in the league from when you play. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, at the end of the year, this is where this list ends. And so maybe it was a cop out. Maybe it made it easier for us to pick, but we left Flanagan off just because of the injury. But let's go to number 11. You and I had a little bit of a fight over this, and I yielded to you. Xavier Wheeler at Georgia. And I think that in the end, as I thought through it, I think you had the winning argument. I did defer to you, but my knock on Wheeler is he was one of the league's least efficient players last year at Georgia. But let's also start that
What I'm
thought
about to say.
at Georgia. Right. And I did watch him. And when you don't have a lot of other guys on your team who can make plays, what happens is the guy who can make plays, when he's your point guard, ends up with the ball in his hands. He's having to beat the shot clock. He's having to beat double teams. Well, on Kentucky, that's going to be a little different this year because of all the guys on that team that are very talented that surround him. Xavier Wheeler was a kid that put up a triple-double a year ago. He put up big counting stats. It was the efficiency where I had the issue. And I think that this year that's going to resolve a good bit just because he's got a better surrounding cast. He's a guy that can put up a triple-double in Lexington this year at times and do it efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, I watched their exhibition game. I know it was an exhibition game against Miles on whatever day that was, Friday. Everything is going to run through him. Like, everything Kentucky does is going to run through him. And so with that argument, I think that unless Kentucky goes 9-16 again, which is probably not going to happen, I think by default he's going to wind up being one of the best 14 players in the league. And again, like you said, at 11, wherever you put him, I don't, maybe 11 today, maybe 12 tomorrow, maybe 14. It does. I think it'll fluctuate, but because he's going to have the ball in his hands as much as anybody on that team, and he's got, one of the most talented rosters, not just in the SEC, but in the country, I think that will by default help his numbers much more. And, if he can, like if his 3-point shot, I think he had 3 threes in that game. Again, it's an exhibition game, but the efficiency may not be there from the perimeter right now, but if he can be someone that kind of, adopts that 3-point shot, it can hit 2 or 3 a game or something, I think he's going to be really hard to stop. And they're going to be hard to stop because that's going to open up a lot more for the other guys, which we're still going to talk about a couple more here in a second. But I think there's such a huge difference between Georgia and Kentucky. If you just watch him and look at the talent, the talent is obviously there. And like you said, we did talk about that. When you're put in a position like he was put in last year, I think your numbers are going to be bad because you're not put in the best position to have success because everything kind of is on you in a certain sense. So that's going to be much different this year. So yeah, I would have a hard time leading him off, I think.
The next one is we go from the bottom to the top. J.D. Davis in Alabama, 5-star point guard, played a big role in their first scrimmage. I know Alabama struggled a little bit, but you see even good teams do that. And he is a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to have a lot of help. And he's one, it was just hard to leave him off the list, even though he has not done anything yet, being that he's a true freshman.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't know where he belongs on this list. Again, your team preference will probably decide that. But again, it's like we just have a hard time keeping him off of it. And where exactly you put him, it's hard to say. But yeah, I mean, it's a guard-oriented offense. We know how they're going to play. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. Going to get up and down the floor. He's going to play a lot. You just talk about adjusting into a system. I don't really have any doubts that he'll be able to adjust just fine into how Nate Oates wants to play. And you put him alongside those other guys. I mean, we're going to talk about those two in a second, but you put him alongside those guys that everybody's going to be keying in on. That's going to open up a lot more, I think, for him too. So, yeah, he's got to be on here somewhere, just based on, I think, talent and the system he's going into. And I'm most curious to see, where does he wind up on that list? Does he wind up in the top 5 at the end of the year? Is he even higher than where we have him? Is he a little bit lower? I'm not sure, but I think he'll be on there somewhere.
Okay, the other guy we always fight over, and you know who this is, so you should,
I
is
don't
Colin
know why everybody
Castleton.
thinks that I hate Colin Castleton. I don't hate Colin Castleton.
You
So
just don't like him as much as I do.
that may be fair, but
That
I don't. I think he's a good player.
Yeah, he is number 9 on our list. And when you're a big man who contributed as much as he did a year ago, really came on. I remember there was a game last year, I want to say in December, where he kind of had his coming out party. And really from there on, Florida was up and down, but Colin Castleton has been fairly consistent. Big men with the track record he's got coming off a year ago are scarce in this league. They're scarce in any league. And I think, is Colin Castleton going to be player of the year in the league? I would be surprised if he is. Is he going to be one of the top 14 players in this league? I think you have to say he is at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like we always joke about that. I think it goes back to last year, probably before he kind of had that coming out party. I think we were, I was talking about it, just you're just kind of waiting on it and wondering what exactly, I guess the ceiling would be for him there. But I mean, it's clear. I mean, you look towards the end of the season and such, and some of the things he was able to do. I mean, just very efficient. And look, at 6'11", he has a skill set that's very, very good for that height and that size. And again, I like the efficiency and what he's able to do just when he's on the court. Because we know, like as a big man, he's not going to play 35 minutes a game or anything like that. But I mean, I think he played 25 minutes a game, something like that last year. Just very efficient in what he could do. And yeah, I mean, I think that you really look at what he did in the NCAA tournament. To me, that was talk about if I was lower on him going into that, I think that kind of proves your point there in terms of, the way he played in the tournament and all those sort of things. Again, we have fun with that, but you are a big Colin Castleton fan. I'm a Colin Castleton fan. And like you said, I think that quite frankly, even at having him at number 9, I could certainly make the argument that he's higher on that list somewhere. I think just based on the potential, especially this year, because it's going to be as we talked about, that's going to be a Florida team that's kind of hard to figure out, I think, early on. But there's no doubt he'll be probably the best player on that team.
Number 8, the guy that is expected to be the best player on a team that could win the league, and that's Kennedy Chandler at Tennessee. Their 5-star point guard. Everybody we talk to just thinks he's going to have a spectacular year.
I mean, probably on our individual lists, I probably have him higher than you. And I think that's probably why, like you said, I think it's kind of the Severe Wheeler argument, but it's, probably a little bit different in that everything Tennessee does is going to go through him. And if Tennessee's going to be a team that can win the SEC, I think it's all on him. And I don't mean that in a pressure type way, but I think he can handle it because he's that good. But like he is a point guard. And I think when you have a point guard, whereas, last year we talked about it with Johnson and Springer and those guys, but I think like this is sort of that guy that's going to fit how they want to play. So I just think he's going to be outstanding. And again, you talk about the guy who's not going to have a hard time putting up numbers. I think that he will be able to do that. And probably, on my individual list, I'd probably have him maybe as high as 6. I mean, I could certainly make the argument to put him, 5 or so maybe. Just based on, I think, of looking at it right now and thinking, okay, he probably has a higher ceiling than a lot of these other guys, because if Tennessee is going to be a team that challenges for the SEC title, I think we'll be talking about him more than anyone else. So
yeah, and just to reiterate, don't get too hung up on the order. This is a guess. I have a really hard time putting guys who've never played a minute in this league, ahead of guys that have a track record. And my feeling is that that's going to get earned in time and it's going to be clear. But at the same time, you don't want to be pig-headed and stupid either. So we just kind of plopped them in the middle of the list.
It's our own fault for calling us Southeastern 14. It's our own fault. We were just like, all right, we can have some fun with this 14 thing. We blame it on us. It's our own fault.
And in a couple of years, it'll be 16. So
yeah, we need those extra 2. So
yes, we just need more time and more work.
Well, I don't know though. Like we're gonna have 2 more teams, so it's like we may feel like we need about 8 more spots at that point. So I don't know. If it's gonna make it any easier.
Well, hey, think if Texas was in the league this year, how tough would this be?
Yeah, right.
Let's see. Let's go to 7. Darius Days. Again, a guy we just kind of stuck in the middle of the list. Based on track record, it's easy to justify. He was a guy that just was so good for them last year. Might have been the glue guy on that team. And LSU expected to be an NCAA tournament team again, and I think he would have to start the season as their best guy.
Yeah, I mean that's what it comes down to. We talked about his value last year, and if he was that valuable on a team that had three other guys, I think we had on our list, and that was the big discussion we had when we did our final 14. I think we had four LSU players on there, and it was like couldn't really justify leaving any of them off, and he was the one that I think that some people were like, well, I don't know, but no, I mean it was clear. Like you looked at the record, we talked about that. They were, some kind of wild record, like they were undefeated or only had one loss whenever he scored 10 or more, 12 or more, something like that. So yeah, and now you take all those other guys off the roster and you're bringing some talent. But like we said, you got someone like, the injury, get someone like that's out for the year now, with Adam Miller and those guys. And now it's like, well, even more, I think, is going to be on Darius Day. So yeah, I mean, he's going to be LSU's best chance, I think, to stay towards the top of the pack. I think they will just by default move down a little bit, but he's going to be their best chance to stay towards the top. And we know, I mean, look at what he's capable of. I mean, he may be someone that would I be shocked if we look up and Darius Days is, leading the league in scoring or, top three, something like that? Probably not, just because I think by default there's a lot of familiarity there and he could score a lot of points. So.
And he's not a one-trick pony either. He does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which we like. Okay, number 6. Here's another guy you and I fought on last year, Iverson Mullinar, who some people I have seen have got him League Player of the Year.
Yep.
I don't know that I'd go that far, but State expected to be an NCAA tournament team. I think most places, I believe they were number 25 in Blue Ribbon's top 25, our good buddy Chris Dortch. But he's a guy who put up big numbers when he played last year. State was up and down. Didn't play a tremendous schedule, and I think that helps you pile up some numbers. But Iverson Mullinar, a guy that's got to be on this list somewhere. And we put him at 6. And again, some people might say that's too low, and I wouldn't tell them necessarily they are wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I'd pull up his stats here because I was thinking off the top of my head, I was like, just every time we talked about him, there was just so many things you could like. I mean, look at his numbers last year: 16.7 points, 3.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists, 0.9 steals, so about a steal a game. Only turned it over about 2 times a game. Played 33 minutes, shot 48% from the floor. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
44% from three, 80% from the free throw line. So it's like there's one of those guys we talk about that, like a Darius Days or whatever, like he's going to contribute in so many different areas. And I think by trying to figure out the value of someone like that, I mean, it's undeniable. And so, yeah, I think that, and, I think it'll be interesting for him too. When you talk about supporting cast, like I think that there's a potential for him to have, a supporting cast that's very, very good. If, guys like Garrison Brooks and DJ Jeffries and all those guys come in and be the players that I think most people think they can be. And then you've still got, Tolu Smith there and guys like that. So he's going to have a really good year. And he's another one, like we said, I could put him in the top 5 and not blink an eye, just because I think that he is probably undervalued on a national level. But I think for people who actually watch the conference, I think it's pretty clear that he's probably one of the 5-6 best players in the league.
Hey, Blake, here's some breaking news. Kentucky's got another star point guard that could be a Player of the Year candidate. Who knew?
Yeah, I mean, I watched that game, and I know it was kind of everyone made out on Twitter about how that Kentucky only won by 9 or whatever it was. But if you actually watch the game, I mean, the Miles look like the 1918 Golden State Warriors shooting threes, and they just came out and hit everything they shot early on, and they got kind of a big lead. But, when you look at Washington, I think he's someone that he is one of those players that I think, I'm trying to think of the best word to describe him. I think it's like smooth. Like he's just a smooth player. Like he just looks like he's got all the confidence in the world. Like he has a really good awareness. And again, that's from watching some of the stuff, probably high school, but also watching some of this exhibition stuff. And you just there are just guys you look at and like, all right, that guy's going to be, I don't want to compare him to anyone. Like I don't want to compare him to De'Aaron Fox or Malik Monk or any of those guys, but like he's made for Kentucky. Like he's that good. And I think that you'll see this year that he's just such a smooth player. His shot smooth. He can make shots from the perimeter. He'll get to the, just with his athleticism, he'll be able to get to the rim and score there. I am really excited for what he's going to be able to do. I think that he's going to be just fantastic this year. And yeah, I mean, if Kentucky wins the league, my guess is he's got a good chance to be the player of the league or player of the year. If it's not the other guy we still have to talk about. So
Yeah, excluding freshmen, and I guess you could put Molinar or Days on this too, but I was thinking that the player of the year, as we talked about it, really sort of came down to four guys, and the next one's Kellen Grady at Kentucky, who played at Davidson. He's going to be the scorer that Kentucky just desperately needed. He's going to be better in an offense where he's got more talent around him that takes the focus off him. I mean, Kellen Grady, if you wind up at the end of the year and you say Kentucky won the league and Grady was their leading scorer and he was very efficient, I mean, right there, a lot of times that's good enough to win you player of the year in the league. And Kentucky, I think the issue with Kentucky is, as you pointed out with Washington, there's so many good ones that they may all kind of cannibalize each other in terms of the stats. But Grady, if he winds up the player of the year at the end of the year, I don't think either of us would be surprised just based on his skill set and what he's going to have around him this season.
Yeah, I mean, someone who's averaged 17 points a game every year in college. And look, let's be clear here. Like Davidson, like that's a program that I know has kind of been up and down in terms of but like they play a style of basketball that I think is, it's still very entertaining to watch. And I think for him, someone who can obviously shoot the three, he can obviously score. There's so much to like here about him, and I think that we've said it before. Like he was the one missing piece, I think. And we're not taking anything away from Wheeler, Washington, any of those guys. Sheboy, this was the guy I think that was the missing piece for them. And to have someone that has all the experience, that can shoot, he's played at the highest level. And again, I know people are like, oh, he played at Davidson. No, he's played in a lot of big games, and he's proven that he's played a lot of minutes too. Let's point that out too. If you look at the numbers, I think he's played like at least 34, 35 minutes a game all 4 years in college. Find me another person out there in the SEC. Maybe there is that I'm just forgetting about, but I can't imagine there's anyone else in the SEC that's played 34 minutes a game in the last 4 years that are on any of these current rosters. I don't think that's the case. And I could be wrong there. Someone maybe I'm forgetting, but I don't think so. And so he's got just a ton of experience. And yeah, I mean, we talk about the kind of, I guess, transferring up. Yeah, you're obviously transferring up if you're going from Davidson to Kentucky, but from a talent standpoint, this guy's going to have no issues. He's going to come out and he may score 30 one night. He may score 15 the next, but he's going to score. And I think that he'll be a big reason why, again, if they win the league, he's probably, I think he's probably the best chance to be the player of the year in that scenario. Or, like I said, it could be Washington. So
I'm glad you mentioned minutes. That's a big thing that I go by, because if your coach can't afford to take you off the floor, now sometimes that's by necessity, but I think minutes kind of get underrated in these discussions. I think a guy that can stay out there 33, 34, 35 minutes, and that's going to affect your efficiency numbers usually as you get tired. I think that's a big selling point in his favor, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I was looking it up here because I couldn't exactly remember, because like we talked about, the last couple of years have been kind of wild. But if you go back, I think he started there 17, 18. So like 2017, 18, Davidson won 21 games, got to the NCAA tournament. They won 24 games the next year, 16 the next year. Last year they only played 20, 22 games, I think, so they won 13 of those. I mean, he's been on a lot of winning teams, and again, he's been a very big part of their success, and they've scored some points. And I have no concerns that he's going to be able to adapt and be one of the better players in the league. So.
Okay, the next guy is Javon Quinnerly at Alabama. He might either be the best player in the league or the third best guard on his own team. It's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, that's wild, isn't it? I mean, look, like we said, obviously we're going to have our top three here. He's number 3. We're going to have 2 Alabama players in our top 3. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what you expect at this point, based on these 2 coming back. And obviously we'll get to the other guy in a second. But yeah, I mean, Quinterly's just, you just look at what, and we've talked about it too. Like, it was so hilarious, I think, when people talked about what he did at Villanova and he leaves there and they're like, oh, he's not that good. You don't just become a 5-star graded player, a recruit, and just get lucky by getting to that point. It was very clear that this guy had a lot of talent, and it was just a matter, I think, finding the right fit. And we always talk about that. Villanova's system was not the right fit. Alabama's system is the perfect fit for him. And I think that will, if Alabama's right back towards the top, even if they don't win the league this year, if they're, 2, 3, whatever, he's going to have a chance to be the best player in the league. And I think it just, again, goes back to showing you that you got to go beyond sometimes just the rankings and all this other stuff. Like, it is about being in the right place at the right time and being in a really good scenario for your skill set. And he's found that at Alabama. And again, it doesn't hurt having another guy right beside him that we're going to talk about, but he's really good. And I would be more surprised than not if we're talking about Javon Quinnerly on anything other than the first team All SEC come March.
Okay, number 2, and we went against the grain on this because most everybody has got him as the player of the year. We picked Scotty Pippen Jr. at Vanderbilt. And really a couple reasons. I think the overriding reason we didn't pick Pippen won, right? Yeah. It is hard to look up at the end of the year and imagine that Scotty Pippen has earned the player of the year based on where Vanderbilt's going to finish, which is probably going to be 8 to 11 kind of range. And I just don't know how many times a guy has won player of the year in this league on a team that finished there. And I guess you could say, well, if a player's dominant enough, maybe he will. And that's true, but you just got so many good players in this league. This league is on the rise. We've already talked about all the freshmen that we had further down the list that could do this. You got the 2 guards at Alabama. I could easily see Alabama winning the league and one of those guys scoring 18, 19 points a game. So I think that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, and this is probably a little unfair to Scotty Pippen Jr., we're in the Nashville area, so I think sometimes when you watch a guy every night, you see the flaws and the defense at times, the intensity on that end and the ability to keep guards out of the lane has been an issue with him. And maybe it gets better this year. I think having a rim protector behind him and Liam Robbins, if they can get him healthy, is going to help them. But I think I look at completion. I want to see my guys do more than just be a scorer, unless they're just a truly elite scorer. I want them to see be efficient. I want to see him play some defense. And I think our reservations with Scottie Pippen, not that we don't think he's a phenomenal ball player, but we're talking player of the year in what's going to be maybe one of the 2 or 3 best conferences in the country this year. And that's when you really start putting these guys under a microscope. And those were a couple things that were a little bit problematic for us.
Well, I mean, if I thought Vanderbilt was going to finish in the top 5 in the SEC, I think he'd be the easy pick.
Yeah.
But I don't. And like you said, there are other things you could point out, too, like you mentioned, parts of his game and stuff. And we can point that out for all these guys. But I think that to me is the biggest thing is, and it's happened before. I'd have to obviously go back and look. But, there have been guys that have won player of the year. If you're just that overwhelmingly good and seemingly above everyone else, you can win player of the year being a team in the bottom half or whatever. And as we've discussed, I think Vanderbilt will be much improved. I don't know that means they're going to jump into the top half or anything, but I think they'll be right on that line somewhere. They could jump up from 8 to 10. I think is probably about right for them, just looking at it heading into the season. But yeah, I think that's the thing is, could he wind up? If he doesn't lead the league in scoring, I'd be surprised. Like, I think he'll be the top scorer in the league. I can't imagine. Even some of the guys we talked about, they're going to score a lot of points, but I still think there is no player, and that's where too, like, it's the discussion you have is there any player that's more valuable to his team than Scotty Pippen Jr.? I would say probably not.
No.
But that is, I think, the difference in how do you interpret most valuable player, and are we picking a most valuable player, or are we ranking players based on other things? And I think we're kind of doing it differently with that. So, I mean, again, he'll probably lead the league in scoring. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't. And as he goes, Vanderbilt will go, and I think that could be a good thing. That will also potentially be a bad thing. As we've talked about, there are some other good players on that roster, but it's just injuries. We talk about it every year, and they're going to have to keep their entire group healthy. I think if they want to have a chance to get to that 8 to 10 range, somewhere in there, but everything they do will go through him.
All right, our player of the year is Jaden Shackleford at Alabama. Again, checks off so many of the boxes. Has proven himself, is on an elite team, gets it done at both ends of the floor. He needs to be a little more efficient. I think that's probably the one knock I have on him. But he's got a 1-to-3 assist to turnover ratio, which is pretty good. Gets some steals, so he plays some defense. And I think the eye test was a big thing. I think as we watched him down the stretch a year ago, we really liked what we saw. And again, same thing I said a minute ago with Quinnerly. Might be the third best guard on his team at the end of the year, but I just felt like with all the things that we need to look at when we're going into this, he just felt like the safest choice, Blake.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it is if you look at the jump he's made since his freshman year, we talk about minutes, right? And like he was someone that it was just Nate Oates had a very hard time taking him off the floor last year. And I think that will be even more the case this year, even though they do have a lot of guards. I just think that he's now got a couple years in that system. He's going to probably wind up averaging maybe 14, 15, somewhere in their points, my guess. It may not be the most points in the league, but I think that he'll do a lot of things that, and maybe, we always say like there are certain things that probably won't show up on the stat sheet. He's now a junior on that roster, and he'll be one of the leaders on the team, and he'll do a lot of I think of the dirty work. Like there'll be a lot of different things that they have to make up for with Herbert Jones, that he's gone. And so I think he's someone that will be able to kind of make up that gap, and some of those things they're going to need, help in with some of the guys that exited from last year. So, I mean, it is like I think it's the best way to put it. Like I feel like he's the safest choice just based on the trajectory of him as a player, and knowing that Alabama's going to have a chance to win the SEC title again. And probably my guess is by the end of the year we're having that discussion about which of the two Alabama guys, which of the two Kentucky guys, and I think that's probably where it comes from. But I'm not going to discount Scotty Pippen either, because I think if he is just as good as he's been, and if he gets even better, which is a scary thought, I think it may be hard to keep him out of that number one spot. But I think, like you said, probably the safest choice at this point is to go with what could be the best player on the best team. And I think that Shackleford has a pretty good chance of doing that. So,
all right, we left out a lot of really good players. I'm just going to name some, and I'll let you listen and tell me if in hindsight you have any regrets of guys maybe we should have put on that didn't. And frankly, some of these guys are going to crack the list at the end of the year. But we've got Noah Gurley, the Furman transfer to Alabama, Chris Likes, the Miami transfer, who's now at Arkansas, who put up some big numbers at times, Oscar Tshiebwe, who is probably the best rebounder in the league coming into the season. At Kentucky, certainly he's going to play a big role. Stanley Umide at, I guess that's how you pronounce it, at Arkansas, who had a big year at South Dakota, I think was the Summit League Player of the Year. Flanders Fleming, who was the Big South Player of the Year twice, I believe, at Charleston Southern, or at least was the Defensive Player of the Year the last 2 years, and put up some big offensive numbers. Now, I don't know how that translates to the SEC, but if you can score and defend, that catches my eye. He should have a big year. DJ Jeffries, now at Mississippi State. He's been at Memphis. Jerron Coleman at Missouri. We mentioned Alan Flanagan. Brandon McKissick, the transfer to Florida. Toulouse Smith, who I've always liked at Mississippi State. Walker Kessler, that's probably the one that we left off that will probably get the most heat for, other than Flanagan, which we explained. I think, frankly, we want to see Kessler prove a little bit more, but if he ends up on this list at year's end, I don't think either of us are shocked. You got Garrison Brooks, who was huge as a junior at UNC 2 years ago. I think was a second-team All-SEC player. Fell off a year ago. You got C.J. Frederick now at Kentucky, who's been at Iowa. John Fulkerson, who was preseason Player of the Year last year, did not make the list. Tyree Appleby, C.J. Felder, Aldis Toney. I mean, just lots of good players. Anybody on there, Kessler's the one to me that if I'm going to say who's going to be on this list at the end of the year that we left off, he might be the one that I've got the most regrets about. But again, that's a prove it to me thing, and he just hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, no, I think it's wait and see. I think that's the case for me with someone like him. Probably, Chris Likes at Arkansas. Theoretically, he should probably be there on that list because he is coming from, an ACC school where he's got experience. I mean, he's proven kind of what he can do. And if that transition's pretty easy, I think that he probably has a chance to wind up on that list somewhere. I mean, Kessler, like you said, we're not knocking the guy in any way, shape, or form. It's just we don't know. And I think not having Flanagan makes Auburn a lot harder to know what you're getting, at least up front. I think once he's back, I've said it before, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Auburn winds up winning the league. Like, I think that they could be that good. But I don't know what to expect until you actually see it. And I think that's the case with a lot of these teams. Florida's one of those teams. You talked about Fleming, guys like that. I have no idea what to expect from Florida. And maybe there are people out there who think they certainly have a better grasp on it than me, and they probably do. But I know what I've seen from Florida, and I know that sometimes the inconsistency makes it very hard to predict what you're going to see from them. I think Amari Davis at Missouri is someone
Yeah.
else that comes from Green Bay. I mean, for
He was
me,
Horizon Player of the Year, wasn't he?
I was going to say, and like I've done the Horizon League for Blue Ribbon, and I tell you, he is, boy, he's a really good player, and I think it's that question that we always have is guys transferring up to the SEC, and how does that go? But I think he's got an outside chance to be one of those sleeper guys that can make that jump. I mean, Kobe Brown, I think, is another one from Missouri. I mean, and that's the thing too with Missouri. We've said they're probably a bottom 4 team, but if they wind up exceeding expectations, I think one of those guys could maybe find their way on there. Outside of that, I mean, like we've said, I think the problem for teams like A&M, South Carolina, Georgia, is that you're expecting them to be bottom tier teams, and I think it's hard to kind of find someone from that group to elevate them above some of these other guys that are going to be ahead of them. So,
well, don't we have the MAC Player of the Year at Missouri too?
Yeah, I mean, I think Missouri is an interesting team, and we've talked about this. I go back and forth on this. One day I say I feel like Missouri has the best potential of those bottom 4 teams to get out of there and maybe jump ahead of a Vanderbilt and Ole Miss, teams like that. But then, I kind of flip back to Texas A&M sometimes because I see the talent and I'm thinking, all right, maybe they put it together. But Missouri is very intriguing because the problem I have with them is any of these players being on this list, it's such a different roster. It's like you're flipping a roster from one of the most experienced teams in the country last year to now banking on all new talent, basically, again, outside of some of the couple guys that are coming back. But that's the issue I have with kind of gauging where Missouri is going to finish because I just don't. It's so hard to know, and that's not unlike a lot of teams in the SEC this year. Just given the transfer rule and everything, there's so many new guys, and how you can look at it on paper. And again, I understand like how fandom works, and it's easy to just point out the positives before the season starts, and you try to be as optimistic as you can. But as we know, it doesn't always play out that way. But how any of us predict how that's going to play out, it's impossible to do.
Well, and to be fair, I think preseason magazine previews are written that way too. Like you read a team and you're like, man, these guys ought to contend for the league, and then you read the 12 other teams and you're like, oh, okay. I think the industry we work in tends to be that way a little bit too. It tends to present the more optimistic type picture, and then as you get into February, reality is set in.
Well, yeah, until you play a game, none of us have any idea.
Right.
We could rank Gonzaga number 1 in the country, but the chances are they'll be good enough to support that. But like until they actually play a game, we have no idea. This is college basketball. It's one of the reasons we enjoy it is because I think on any night, and it's not the case for every game, but like there's just so many different possible outcomes. And I think I always say, and some people have not liked this, but I don't think the preseason top 20, I don't think it means anything. Like I think it's, if you win games, at some point you'll wind up in the preseason in the top 25 in the country. If you start there, great. It's a great baseline to go off of. But if you lose games, you're not going to be there. If you win games, you'll have a good chance to get in there if you're, a team that can support that type of ranking. But it's just guesswork. Like, I hate to say that, but like, yes, like we feel like we have some knowledge, but ranking 14 players, trying to find, picking our SEC power rankings and teams, it's a lot of guesswork. It's based on trying to feel like you have an educated, guess at what's going to happen, but it's just, there's no way to know. So.
Well, and the one thing that you and I think always try to do, we don't get dug into opinions. We want to see games. We've got our ideas, and we both said, hey, we're going to be way wrong on some of these. But it's fun to do. It's fun to talk about. It gives fans things to look for. But if a guy on this list is having a horrible season, 10, 12 games in, he's not going to be on the list anymore. If a guy that we didn't even talk about is jumping off the page, When I say didn't talk about it, I don't mean just didn't have on the list. I mean, in the 15 other names we threw out there, if one of those guys is popping, he's going to get on our lists. And so if you didn't see your favorite player, the guy that you think has got a chance to pop, or the guy we just got it wrong on, hey, when this plays out, we'll adjust accordingly. We're not going to dig into what we thought going into the season just because we want to be proven right. And I think, frankly, Blake, I think that's the fun part about this season. We've had such a hard time trying to quantify everything that we've done and condense it into a rating. And at the end of the day, we kind of, as we talked about it privately, we just kind of both threw up our hands and said, we're going to go with it and put it on paper to have something, but we're going to be way wrong about some of this. And frankly, I'm glad we are, because it's much more fun of a season when you are.
Just be optimistic going into the season. That's why I think, if anyone has opinions on this, and I know people will, but it's like, be as optimistic as you can about your favorite player or favorite team. Like, you should tell us why. All right, I'm very optimistic that this player who wasn't even on your list is going to be the best player in the league or anything. Like, I mean, great. Like, that's fine. Like, be very optimistic. But like we said, we always adjust as the season goes along. And this is the best list you can come up with, I think, based on what we know at this point. And we'll see kind of where the pieces mix and match as the season goes along.
And when Colin Castleton wins Player of the Year, I'll just give you a big I told you so.
If Florida wins the league, or they are in contention, he'll probably have a good shot. But when Kentucky has a chance and we're all watching Severe Wheeler hold the trophy,
you're going to rub my nose in it, and you should.
Sponsored by Southeastern 14, the trophy this year. So that's funny because those two we've talked about so much over the past couple of years. But that'd be fun if that winds up being the Player of the Year races. Those two, that'll be good. So
gosh, we're almost here. We are doing this Monday, and Tuesday night it starts, and it's just going to be so much fun to watch.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Big game, at least for Kentucky to start off with. A lot of other interesting games. So.
And we'll have you covered. He's Blake Lovell for the 14. I'm Chris Lee. Be sure and follow our Twitter handles. Follow our Twitter handle on Twitter, which is at 14 Southeastern. I think I've lost Blake. But in any case, check out our website at southeastern14.com. For Chris Lee, I'm Chris Lee. He's Blake Lovell. Thanks for watching.